The Metaverse is emerging as the next big technology platform and promises to be the next frontier for human experiences on the internet. Into the Metaverse covers companies, technologies, and trends that are bringing these promises to life. Join creator and host Jonathan Ross-Friedman, founder and CEO of Supersocial, as he interviews the brilliant minds that are building, shaping, and investing in the Metaverse.
Welcome to Into the Metaverse, where we help make sense of the Metaverse through deep interviews with the brilliant minds who build, create for, and invest in the Metaverse. I'm Jan, and joining me today is Timmu Toke, co-founder and CEO of Ready Player Me, a cross-game avatar platform for the Metaverse with more than 3,000 companies that use their avatars in their products, including VR Chat, Spatial, Somnium Space, Artifact, and more. The company also already works with individual creators and fashion brands such as Adidas, New Balance, Dior, Pull&Bear, and Warner Brothers. And the company, until today, raised $72 million in venture funding from a long list of investors, which we don't need to mention. Some of them more well-known, some of them less, but a lot of great investors. So, Timmu, really delighted to welcome you on the show.
Hey, I'm very, very happy to be here and discuss the Metaverse.
Yes, it's going to be fun. And as always, everything discussed on the pod is not a financial advice. Content is strictly educational. With that in mind, Timmu, let's dig in. So as we continue to build an evolving consensus for what is the Metaverse, the first question I like to ask every guest speaker who comes on the show, really to build that sort of diversified point of view, is what is the Metaverse for you? What is the Metaverse for Ready Player Me?
Yeah, so the Metaverse is a network connected 3D virtual worlds. That's a core part of the Metaverse. You can access it, of course, through different types of hardware, like phones or desktop or VR and AR. So it's not VR or anything like that specifically. It's just 3D virtual worlds. And I think the important part for us is that those worlds need to be connected. They need to be interoperable and open. And that's kind of like what makes something like the current kind of gaming world, where people have a lot of different experiences and they spend a lot of time in virtual worlds already, and it's already a big market, but it's not quite the Metaverse. So what really makes something like that a Metaverse is, those worlds need to be connected. So kind of end state, or the real state of the Metaverse is more like the internet, where you can navigate between different pages and different worlds, and it's a somewhat consistent experience over the kind of current gaming world in that sense. But some parts of the Metaverse are definitely already here. People spend a lot of time in virtual worlds. They enjoy virtual worlds. They enjoy hanging out in virtual worlds. So that's great. But yeah, there's still things to build.
One of the things that I really like about your story with Wolf 3D, which is the company that created Ready Player Me, is that you guys have been exploring the space and what 3D avatars mean for quite a while now, right? Over 7-8 years since you and your partners actually started the journey of building the company. And so I'd love for you to unpack a bit for the listeners, the Ready Player Me journey, right? How did it all start? What's the current status of the company? And where really you guys are heading?
Yeah. For sure. So we started almost 9 years ago, actually, and it was around the time when Oculus was acquired by Facebook, and we realized VR is probably going to be a thing, and it's going to be social, and avatars will play a massive role in VR, because that's who you are in VR, that's how you speak with other people. And even before that, actually, what kind of put us in a position to even do something with avatars. We started exploring 3D printing. I bought a bunch of printers, just started messing around with that. We started scanning things, we started scanning people. So we had messed around with the kind of 3D technologies for a while. And then when it was acquired, I was like, okay, let's really focus on trying to solve the problem of creating great avatars for people. And I was 20 back then. So we were from Estonia, by the way, that's where we started. So we knew nothing about nothing. And then we were going to just start kind of learning and building. And it started from hardware. So we built studio scanners that had hundreds of cameras, scanned tens of thousands of people with hardware, and collected a massive database of face scans, essentially. And then we used those face scans to build a deep learning solution that would take a single selfie and convert that to different styles of avatars. And that was a product on its own. We licensed to all kinds of companies like Tencent, Huawei, HTC, Vodafone, Verizon, H&M, Wargaming, and so forth. So we had a lot of customers, most of the bigger customers that licensed the SDK. But what ended up happening is that they didn't only need the kind of personal avatars, they also needed the entire avatar system around that. So the bodies and the hair and the animation systems and everything around the avatar to the entire outer system, basically. And we ended up custom building those because they were all in different engines and there were different like specs and different styles. We built dozens of outer systems over 4 years. And that was actually a cash flow positive business. But by the end of that 4 years, like it was clear that we won't scale as fast as we want. It was clear that it's very hard to make those outers interoperable. And we decided to drop the enterprise business and build Ready Player Me, which was like from the ground up, built as a platform, built as a kind of end-to-end developer tool that people can add up easily on their own. And that's the story. And then we dropped the enterprise business, which was cash flow positive. It wasn't easy to do that, to drop it. And then we launched Ready Player Me at like the second month of the pandemic or something like that. It was like May 2020. And then it took off right away. So it was a perfect timing. And it was a great product because we have built so many outer systems from scratch ourselves. We really understood what it takes to build one. We really understood what it takes to build something that developers can use. And then, it just had a very kind of strong kind of product market fit right from the get-go. And then we grew to like 30 companies using the product by the end of that year, 2021. It was 1,000 by the end of the year. Now it's like 4,000 actually. You mentioned 3,000 the for. So it's
that's a big difference. That's another 1,000.
yeah. It's quite a bit.
The genesis is phenomenal and makes a lot of sense. I'm sure from an entrepreneurial perspective, dropping the cash flow positive business wasn't an easy thing to do, but seems like you guys have chose exactly the right timing because that allowed you to launch something in May 2020, really when the pandemic accelerated the human behavior shift of people starting to connect more through the 3D avatars. And obviously the whole space is growing, and we're going to talk about that because that's a big part of this new wave.
The fact that we launched it just at the beginning of the pandemic is just pure luck. But what we saw over the years where we started out was going to be important. And every year that went by, it was like more and more obvious that that's the case. It's just so obvious for us, and we could see, outers coming to more mainstream to like Bitmoji, it was like Memoji, it's just like more and more kind of outer stuff came out over these years. But like in our perspective, we just became experts in something that is like extremely valuable now over this 6 years or 7 years of grinding. And by the time it was obvious for a lot of people, we were in a perfect position to build it. And that's where the market was really ready to adopt that on a major scale. And also we had a product that was ready for that. So that's just something I wanted to add. But it's become expert in something that is obviously for you, for some reason, it's going to be obviously important, but nobody else really knows that yet. And by the time everybody else figures it out, you're in a position to win. That was our journey anyways.
I think that's so important because I felt like starting Super Social and starting the company in June 2020, I felt like, oh, wow, I'm so much ahead of the curve, right? It's like, we're coming into the Roblox platform and no one even talks about the Roblox platform. And look what happened now. The Metaverse, I remember in my seed round, July 2020, there was a slide, what is the Metaverse? What is Roblox? Why does it matter? And I felt like I was early, and you guys have been working on 3D avatar related technology several years prior, which, as you said, really positioned you well to commercialize the tech alongside the pandemic, which accelerated the human behavior shift with regards to 3D avatars. And so I just think it's super important for the audience to recognize that there's not a lot, but there's definitely a few companies with founders and entrepreneurs and builders who, have been believing in this movement for the last several years, right? And obviously took advantage of the fact that COVID arrived. And you were talking about luck. And, true, there's some element of luck, but luck favors the bold. And you guys were bold enough to think about 3D avatars is actually going to be a thing in the future of the internet. And you've been working on it for several years and positioned yourself really well. And so as a company builder and as an entrepreneur, I know how difficult that is. And it's amazing to see the timing that you guys have been there with the right product. It's not enough to be there at the right time. You also need to have a great product. And that's all about execution. That's the harder part, right? It's like, let's all have the epiphany that 3D avatars is going to be a thing, but also having the right product at the right time for the right market. That is where great stuff and great companies are being built. And so now that we talked a bit about the genesis, and I know we talked about about 4,000 companies that are using the Ready Player Me avatar technology and avatar tool set. Where are you guys going over the next 3 to 5 years? And how do you think about Ready Player Me's evolution in the context of the emerging metaverse?
Totally. I think generally the metaverse kind of has two potential paths. One path is a more kind of centralized path where kind of continue in a kind of a gaming world today, which if it gets even more consolidated, there's going to be one or a few big players that kind of like control the metaverse or are the biggest part of the metaverse. We don't think that's a good future. The other kind of potential future is a more decentralized and open metaverse. And that's like what we discussed in the beginning. It's like more like the internet. You can navigate between different pages. It's built by millions of different creators and developers and builders, and it's not owned by anyone. And we think that's a more positive future for the metaverse. And our goal is to nudge the world towards that open metaverse. Like, so by building interoperable avatars, we're building avatars to travel across worlds. We break down some of the virtual walls and connect the different experiences closer together. And by doing that, we push the world towards a more open metaverse. And demonstrating that interoperable economies are better and stronger and bigger than like a closed economies, for example, is an important thing for us to show that if you have an avatar and avatar accessories you can use in like thousands of games, it's much better for end users and they'll spend more and it's a better business for the developers. Like proving the points that make the world tip towards a more open metaverse, that's important for us. And that's where we want to go. And of course, have as many games as we can, have as many kind of like cool experiences and so forth, yeah.
And how is Ready Player Me as a platform, as an enabler, how does that, in your mind, going to help accelerate or help enable an open, interoperable metaverse? And you guys are working with thousands of customers now, right? Different creators, anywhere from small creators to large enterprises. How is that going, in your mind, going to accelerate an open, interoperable metaverse?
In order for the open metaverse to have a chance, there need to be some cross-game protocols, standards, and services that kind of link those different virtual worlds together. And avatars are such an important part. Like that's your identity in a virtual world. That's who you are. A big part of the economy revolves around the avatar as well. So you want to buy assets that are persistent across worlds. So by building a service or a platform that enables people to use their avatar across many different worlds, we create the precedent of something that travels across worlds, and we create a more kind of a unified experience. So that's one part. The other part is the biggest thing that will make people tip towards an open metaverse in the wider kind of game development world and so forth. I think it just needs to be a no-brainer business decision to build an open economy or open kind of game over building another closed kind of walled garden. So there needs to be a scaled example of someone doing that. So I sell the skin that is only in my game. I sell the skin that is working in 1,000 games. Like, you should be able to generate more revenue as a developer by selling a skin that works in 1,000 games, right? That's kind of like something that needs to be proven. And I think avatars are a great way to prove that because they're naturally persistent. People naturally spend money on their avatars. So like by just showing developers that building an open system is just a better business for you is something that makes the people tip that are not philosophically aligned with the open metaverse. That's what we think is important. And we can do that as a platform. We can prove that and we can show that in numbers. And then, of course, there's a question like, how do we evolve as a platform and not build walls around us, essentially. Our mission is to break down walls to build a more connected virtual world. So what does that look like? Become more open source over time? We don't exactly know, but what we want to have is strong values, trust and be trusted. So do things that contribute and help the ecosystem. Or we're trying to rebuild the old power dynamics again in a new world. But those are things that are not obvious. And I think, having the right values to start is the way to do and way to go, and then evolve as the space evolves and as we understand how all those things are going to play out.
What are some of the key use cases you guys are seeing now of how creators and brands are using your platform, and how is it being utilized currently, and how do you see that evolve in a way that continue to drive value both for creators and brands and ultimately enabling new opportunities for consumers to obviously express themselves through these 3D avatars?
Our focus is on working with developers that build virtual worlds, games, experiences that are fun for you to play and do stuff in. And there's a lot of different experiences. There's some games, there's some shooters, there's some social virtual worlds, there's education apps. There's a bunch of them. Just teaching kids math as avatars, for example. There's VR meetings, there's virtual events, there's social apps, there's all kinds of gaming platforms. So there's a very wide range of different applications that just give utility for the avatars or use the avatars as a tool. As an avatar company, that's the only thing that matters. And that's what we've been focused on, just making tools to get into apps that are cool to play. And the goal with that is just to evolve the size of companies we can work with over time as the product itself becomes more mature and more flexible for developers, going up market over time, essentially. And as we do that, the network of users that use Ready Play Me grows, and developers get more of the benefits of selling cross-game assets and so forth. And over time, the network itself becomes the main value. So being able to sell cross-game assets, being able to acquire users from the existing network, that becomes the main value of the product. And as this thing evolves, like the types of customers we can work with also changes over time. We want to keep the tools open and free for anyone to build and experiment and use. Anyone in a garage hacking together the next Web3 game or not Web3 game or any other experience using avatars, like we want to be there.
That's a great springboard to another point I wanted to pick your brain on. Video games have obviously evolved into a mainstream form of entertainment over the past 10 years. What role do you envision gaming plays in the broader metaverse vision? Just to give context, it is my belief that video games and gaming is obviously an initial core use case of the emerging metaverse, but how do you envision creators taking advantage of advanced tech to build experiences for avatars that didn't necessarily exist before? And I know we're talking about interoperability across multiple platforms, and theoretically speaking, that's exciting, and that's definitely the direction we want to go. But more practically speaking, in the next few years, how do you envision gaming as a subsector in the metaverse continuing to shape what the metaverse become?
Gaming is the way people mostly experience 3D worlds. So it's definitely the most important and foundational part of like how this thing evolves. There needs to be something fun to do in a virtual world. That's why gaming is the core. There's a whole industry that's figured out how to build experiences, virtual worlds that are exciting for people that they spend $200 billion in them every year, which is 4 times more than they spend on music, for example. That industry is very much there and very strong and knows how to build cool experiences. And that's what we need to use as a foundation to build the next kind of generation of the metaverse. And I think the people that have the skills of building those virtual worlds or engaging experiences are the people that are going to build, at least partially, the next generation of the metaverse as well. But at the same time, the old mindset of building games today, it's a very kind of a standard template model, depending on what kind of genre and performance stuff you look at. It's very much a template. So that old mindset of building in that way needs to change. And partially it could happen inside the gaming industry, but it probably also has to be someone coming in with a whole different perspective on these things, and then using the existing skills of the gaming industry to deliver on that. I think at the moment, a lot of the Web3 native games and worlds, they don't have enough of the gaming industry deep knowledge of how to build those experiences technically and user experience-wise. They have the right mindset from the openness perspective and so forth. But then they need to acquire the skills of building those worlds. That's not the core skill for them.
And I think brands are super important. Brands play an amazing role in consumer adoption of metaverse type platforms. I'd love to pick your brain and hear what are you seeing with brands, how they're using your platform today, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, totally. When we think about person identity, avatar, like the way you express your own real life identity, a lot of people use brands to express their real life identities as well. That will also happen in the virtual worlds. And there are existing brands in the world that people are affiliated with, feel a connection to, and so forth. And we want those brands to exist in the metaverse because it's a way people express their identity visually. So we work with a lot of brands because we think they will be an important part of how people create their avatars. Just very practically, from a brand's perspective, when you're building virtual fashion with avatars, with virtual fashion, the first question that matters is, where can I use it? If you can't use it anywhere, it can be a collectible, and there's a market for that, but it's a small market. Eventually, if you want to build a scaled business in a virtual world, in the metaverse, fashion business, let's say, then yeah, you need to create assets that are usable in lots of different virtual worlds. And you can do that by going to each individual world, create custom assets for them, different technical spec, make a custom deal with them, and go one by one and try to get distribution like that. Every collection create 40 different ways, again, versus come to Ready Play Me, integrate with our avatars. Our avatars themselves are interoperable across all those worlds. So when you create your Tommy Hilfiger outfits or fits, then those outfits become usable across the entire Ready Player Me network. So they really become like Metaverse assets. And today it's 4,000 companies. It's going to be 40,000. We're going to continue scaling the network. So the utility you get from owning the asset or buying the asset grows over time because you can use them in more and more experiences you would like to enjoy.
And what are some of the use cases you see today with brands like Adidas, for example? What are some of the stories you're seeing already with how brands have been using your platform to create just fantastic user experiences? Because I think a lot of the pessimism to some extent by people in the ecosystem is it's nice to have. What are you talking about? Personal expression. Why does it matter? What are some of the things you're seeing that actually move the needle from a user experience perspective that you get excited about when you look at how people are using your platform?
So Adidas, they built their own avatar collection. So you go to an experience where you answer a set of questions about your own personality. And based on that, they generated an avatar. And that's purely on their end, actually. And then they exported that avatar to Ready Player Me. And then we gave this avatar utility in all the different games and worlds we are integrated with. That's an example. But that's, again, an experimental, pushing the boundaries and seeing what we can do. Tommy Hilfiger, we did a campaign where you could buy virtual garments. And then once you play in for free, and then once you have the virtual garment, you can buy the physical as well. I can't share any numbers and any statistics because they're like not publicly shareable. But after we do a lot of those things, we can share some generalized learnings. So basically, we've done things like that. I think the brands that are thinking about this in the right way are not approaching it, oh, it's a marketing thing, it's a metaverse, let's just do something in the metaverse that no one's really done before, and that's a campaign, and that's like cool, and that's like a temporary thing. A lot of the brands are thinking about it the correct way, and it's like the virtual economy of people buying virtual assets for their virtual avatars is going to be massive, right? It's massive today. Like Fortnite makes $4 or $5 billion a year, mostly driven by skins, avatar accessories. So that's going to be massive, and it's high margin revenue. They have built their brands in the real life already, in real world. They have people that want to buy their stuff just because it's their brand. And why shouldn't they leverage that in a virtual world as well, right? They should take a part of the future avatar economy. And like that's where the real value is for the brands. And then like the numbers are, how much you can sell. How much you can sell in the virtual world. Can you convert that back to like physical world sales? Can you convert physical world sales to digital, virtual metaverse sales, and so forth?
So I have a question, right? So we, Super Social, we're primarily focused at the moment on the Roblox platform, and obviously avatar fidelity, avatar identity is absolutely huge on the Roblox platform, right? And I'm sure you've seen the numbers. 1 out of 5 daily users on Roblox change their avatar outfit every day. That's approximately between 10 to 12 million people changing their outfit. So for those skeptics out there that don't really figure out what is virtual goods, why do I change my avatar stuff? Why would I want to do that? Well, there's a whole generation of people and users that are already doing it, and it may well likely grow to become billions of people that do it every day, every week.
Oh yeah.
My question on a platform level, because I know the mission for Ready Player Me is to be like open and interoperable across platforms. And I don't know if you can share or whatever you're able to share, or maybe even if it's just a perspective. How does Ready Player Me plays along with platforms that are building their own closed avatar ecosystems like Roblox, like Fortnite Creative, and maybe even other platforms that are non-blockchain yet? What's your point of view? Are you looking to play ball with these folks? Love your perspective on where do they sit in the context of your strategy?
So first, that's not our immediate focus, is to work with the biggest games and platforms out there. We are connected, definitely, but it's not something that we think is the best thing to spend time on at the moment. We're focused on growing our network, and that's the main thing. Over time, we definitely want to play ball with them. We definitely want to work with them, and there's a future where we are not the only avatar on the platform. We could also take an avatar out of a game and make that avatar travel to different games, and take it out of a big game, existing game that has an existing community, a lot of people that use the avatars, and make that avatar travel with you across the metaverse, right? So that's another way to work with some of the bigger ones.
To be seen. Another thing that I'm really excited about, and I wrote a piece about it, the real versus the unreal, which is essentially the connecting tissue of the metaverse between physical and digital. Like, I believe that the metaverse, to be fully realized, has to be connected to the real life. It can't just be this isolated virtual realm that has nothing to do with our physical existence, because that's not how humans operate. We need connection to real things. We need connection to real life. We are human creatures, and we need to be connected to what's real also, not just what's on URL. How do you guys think about the URL, IRL integration in the future with Ready Player Me platform? What is that IRL integrations or synergies in how avatars come to life also in physical form, either if it's for shopping, having my avatar outfits that are then translated to physical items that I purchase? So a couple of questions here. Number one, what's your long-term point of view on that connection between digital and physical, and how are you thinking about it from the context of what you guys are building?
An interesting topic, and I don't, it's like, how is Twitter or LinkedIn connected with the physical world today? It has the same people that operate in those worlds. It has the same products that are advertised or shown or talked about in those virtual worlds that are also in the physical world. There are the same ideas. There's the same, but the form is like a website. So I'm not sure if like the kind of physical virtual world connection needs to be visual in that sense, but the world, it's just an extension of the real world. It's like a different way to connect with people, to experience world, have social interactions, whatever. The metaverse, there could be some metaverses that are like copies of real worlds. There definitely will be, but I don't know. We probably just don't have a very strong point of view on that. Also because we don't really need to know. Like, we need to be the best out there system. If there's some like real world IRL kind of experiences that bridge the virtual world, then we're very happy to support that. I guess AR is like somewhat like that. You can have a chat with someone that is like an avatar that is like in the physical world with you. So that's already there a little bit, but yeah, I don't have a super strong point of view on that.
Yeah. Well, I recommend thinking about it. I'm not always asked questions by guests on the show, so yeah, I'm happy to chime. Look, I think it's going to be huge, and I'll tell you why, right? Because 3D avatars are going to be such a phenomena and a way to represent our personalities in virtual worlds, right? In interoperable network of open virtual worlds, right? It doesn't matter who the platform is. And I think that's the beauty of what you guys are building. It's a platform agnostic. You're an avatar platform that is agnostic of other platforms, which is great. And I think we're going to have identity in virtual worlds. I think we're going to purchase things in virtual goods, et cetera, et cetera. And I think brands, anywhere from replay jeans to luxury Gucci bags to whatever jewelry or makeup and beauty, whatever it is that we already do in physical format, a lot of those brands and new brands that are going to be metaverse native, quote unquote, will build those goods. But a lot of those brands are also already have massive businesses in real life. I think it's going to be a very natural evolution of connecting what I own as a digital good. And it doesn't matter if you unlock it through an NFT or not. I don't care about that. I don't think that's the main point. What the point I'm trying to make is that I think once I'm representing myself and my personality and my identity in virtual worlds with all kind of goods and avatar items, which I believe is going to be a multi-billion, potentially trillion-dollar market. I do. Yeah. I think having a connection to what does it mean for me in physical world? Can I own those same things in physical world? And what is the connecting tissue between the two? I'll give you an example. I buy a new type of jeans from Levi's. I'm so excited about that jeans. And then I actually retrofit it. I do something to it. I take a photo of it, and that photo is being uploaded to something like Ready Player Me, and it suddenly become a cross-digital physical item that I created in real life and brought it to the metaverse, and vice versa. I can create completely something new in the metaverse, and then I actually wanted it as jeans, so maybe I can upload it to Levi's Me or something like that, and then I just make it, and they make it and become popular. There's just so many opportunities that I think are going to be unlocked from that, either through mass customization or these brands creating their own items that are based on popular demand in the metaverse. And so to me, there's such a natural connection, and I know it's too early for you guys to figure that out. It's not a priority. But if you ask me, and I think you have, I think that's a massive opportunity of where that intersection of URL and IRL can really come to life and completely shape what consumer brands mean in the next era of the internet. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think, to sell virtual items in a physical world in some way, like
there needs to be a way to make those virtual items work for most people that could be buying them, right? Like right now, you can't do that because, yes, you have large digital economies or like virtual economies in games, but if you sell Call of Duty skins or something like Fortnite skins in a Prada store, like, well, what's the percentage of people that are gonna like have see that as valuable, right? It needs to be general enough in that sense to be valuable for most people that could buy it in a physical world. And that's why today it's still like you sell this stuff where people are playing it because it's such a small fraction of general population essentially in that sense, right? In that sense.
For sure. It's definitely more of a long-term prospect. I think it's happening anytime soon. But I think what's exciting is that the generation that is going to be relevant for that are now teenagers, a lot of them, kids and teenagers. And I think that's why it's going to take another 5, 7, 10 years until, first of all, until avatar goods become widespread on a global level and go from a couple 100 million to a couple billion. And then also, how does that translate to physical life?
Yeah.
So, definitely a lot to look for. I want to talk about the what I think of the scale of the population of avatars in the metaverse, right? And so I believe that metaverse population, quote unquote, is going to grow to surpass 100 billion people. It's essentially 100 billion avatars. And I think the reason I have that point of view is because I believe that every person, every user on the internet is going to have multiple identities, right? We can create, there's infinite opportunities to express ourselves. Right. I can be one person in the morning, one person in the afternoon, and one person at night. We're already doing it to some shape or form in real life. Yeah. But it's going to be completely unlimited by anything when we talk about virtual worlds. And I believe on top of that, there's going to be a massive economy and applications ecosystem built around that community of 100 billion people or 100 billion avatars. What do you think it means? First of all, I mean, let's not argue on the number, right? It could be 10 billion, 100 billion. That's not the point. The point is going to be massive. There's going to be a lot of quote unquote metaverse little people running around virtual worlds. What do you think it means for businesses, for brands, for communities when billions of avatars communicating, engaging, exploring, playing, working in these large networks of virtual worlds?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, people will definitely have several avatars they use, and I think they'll be different for use cases. So if you have a business avatar, like you have a LinkedIn profile, it's a more business, kind of more like a business looking thing, and like your LinkedIn profile. You have an Instagram avatar, social, more cool, face tattoos, stuff like that. So you have different avatars for use cases. But what Second Life, for example, saw was that, they tried to make it very easy for people to have multiple avatars. And 95 or 98% of people always just use the same avatar, the same identity. Like you can use the outfits and stuff, change outfits and stuff, but you're still the same kind of like identity, because identity is like naturally persistent. And you can definitely express it in multiple ways, but it's still, people will have some kind of consistency there. So that's one part. The other part, what brands and companies should think about is it's a massive opportunity, right? Imagine the economy around all that stuff. Imagine your some of the physical world economy will convert to the virtual world, and is likely to be even more powerful there because it's more open, it's less controlled, like whatever. So it's a major opportunity. I think it makes sense to experiment and understand how you could fit into that world. But at the same time, it takes time to get there. We're not there yet. Like on one end, the gaming industry is here. It's gigantic, and you can already sell virtual goods and avatars and accessories, and it's a massive market already. But the future promise of the metaverse is not here, and it'll take decades. Who knows? But it's important to be here and evolve with it, be brave and make experiments and think long term. Long term.
No, absolutely. And I think that in my mind, it's kind of video game. The metaverse at the moment, or kind of its first incarnation, is very much just an evolution of the video games, right? It's like video games becoming more like networks, but it's still very much around games and
That's
play.
Right.
I think where the real inflection point will happen is when it's not just about video games anymore, but it's really about the intersection of video games, virtual worlds, and social networks that are really becoming something that, sure, you can come in and play, but it's not going to be about a video game. It's almost like we are going to reimagine what is a video game, essentially, because there's so much kind of confusion and confluence of ideas at the moment between everything is a game. I mean, we work with brands and they come to the Roblox platform And, you know, at the moment, yes, the virtual world is about games, it's about play, and that's okay. I think where things gets really exciting is when we go beyond that, and we go beyond that into places where engagement and fun is not necessarily directly correlated with, quote unquote, a game loop, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I do believe that terms like a game loop, monetization, live operations, I think these are going to become terms that every consumer brand need to think about, regardless of what they do, regardless of what they build. It's almost like every consumer brand is going to have a lives op strategy in the future, not just a video game, because we're all going to live in a 24/7 through 365 always on world.
Yeah.
We're already kind of do, but it's going to be even more than what it is today because of the nature of the technology.
Agreed.
And I think that's where a big part of the inflection point is going to happen. And it's going to take time, to your point, which is why it's way too be early. Maybe I haven't been early as you guys, but I still feel like I was early.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's, being early is not exactly fun.
No, I mean, an entrepreneur.
Now it is. Now is the right time.
Of course.
9 years ago wasn't the right time to start.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, I guess looking back, it could, Anyways, doing something before it's obvious is hard. But
It's about being passionate. It's about being passionate and persistent, and you guys believe all along that this is where the world is going, and you didn't drop it, right? You didn't raise all this money 7 years ago. It really, a lot of it came in the last year and a half. Exactly. So, and I think that's the important message here, which is, and I'm with you on that, which is, I started Super Social June 2020 because I believe this is where the world is going. Virtual world is going to be the next big modality of the consumer internet, of the enterprise internet. And we're in it for the long run, and this is why it's exciting. I think there's a lot of opportunism. There's always going to be opportunism, and I think those who truly believe and want to help build that future are going to stick around. And I think you're seeing it now with the financial uncertainty and how less attractive, quote unquote, it is to start a startup now, because it's not that easy to raise money just on a 5-slide presentation with the word, tokens and NFTs in it. So you really need to have a point of view. You need to have a vision, and you need to believe that this is where you want to spend the next 10, 15 years of your life if you want to build something meaningful.
Yeah, and the best people, the best entrepreneurs tend to start in uncertain times, or it's not like, it doesn't stop them. It stops 100%. All the other people that just expect it to be fun. It is definitely fun, but it's a lot of work too.
Timmu, before we conclude this awesome conversation, I like to conclude the conversation always with, what's the one thing you want the listeners to take away from the conversation today?
Yeah, so I think the metaverse is going to be incredibly powerful. We're going to spend a lot of time in virtual worlds, and I think it makes sense for us to be conscious about the potential ways it will play out or could play out, and to make an effort to push it in the right direction. We don't want the metaverse to be owned by a few companies that make all the rules. That's just too much power for a few companies. I think it's an amazing opportunity for creators and builders if it ends up working out in the right way.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Timmu, thanks so much for being with me today.
Thank
where
you
are in Mexico, and it's been awesome to have you. Finally.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Into the Metaverse. We hope you learned a lot and explored new aspects of the metaverse.